thank you for the invitation, Bethany. Thank you for the introduction. I think I have good citations because I have very, very good collaborators. This is why. So I think that this is a very good initiative. We also have had some of these meetings in Spain, meeting scientists and managers, but I would say that less people attend to those. So congratulations for this. So I'm going to talk about why does we need impact assessment protocols, and I think that in next talk there will be an application of these protocols. And well, risk is something that it's common in our daily life, and especially in the media, like the risk of infection, the risk to have a work accident or a traffic accident, or for instance, the risk of poverty or to be excluded from the society. And in order to prevent this risk, we have tools and protocols, right? Like we wash our hands, we have all sorts of, equipment to prevent this risk as it works. We have traffic signals, and we know that good public education is one of the keys to prevent poverty and exclusion. And we also have environmental risks. Some of them are natural, like for instance, a volcano or a landslide. This is something that we cannot prevent many times. But some of these environmental risks are environmental, like this oil spill, natural or anthropogenic, sorry, or the fires or the flooding. These are somehow in between. These are natural, but they are affected by humans. And biological invasions will be, are this type of risks because species disperse naturally, but human agents are exacerbating this movement. Like for instance, this will be moving horticultural plants around, or pets, or for cargos. And why we care about biological invasions? Mainly because of their impacts, and not only biodiversity impacts, which I guess that most of us are interested on biodiversity, but for also major economic and socioeconomical issues, like for instance, the impact that they might have on crop production, on reducing the land for farming, on changes in on disturbance regimes, on affecting infrastructure, pollen allergy, other human health, and also cultural, right? And we have developed risk assessments of biological invasions, and these are systematic and reproducible screening protocols to evaluate both the likelihood of invasion and whether they will cause harm. And these are scientifically based tools that try to support policymakers in their decisions regarding the management of invasions. And the good thing about them is that they are not complicated to work with, to use these protocols, and they provide semi-quantitative measurements of the species. And the idea is that they can be used by non-scientists to identify the worst species. So many scientists will use them, and we develop these protocols, but I think that one of the main ideas is that many people can use them if they know a little bit about these species and if they have the scientific information available. So the idea is that these risk assessments can inform about which species will be transported, which ones can be introduced, which ones have the largest likelihood to be established, to invade, and to cause impact, right? And the first of these risk assessments, the one that it was the first one, it was this one that was constructed in Australia for biosecurity, and it's a quiz of 49 questions about the biology, the biogeography, the climate, the invasive species elsewhere, and undesirable traits. And with this protocol, you screen the species, and you have a number, like a score for the species, and depending on the score, you say, okay, this species, we allow it to enter to the country, or we don't allow it to enter into the country, so we reject the species, or there is not enough information, we require more information. But many times, we only can focus on impact, or it's worth to focus only on the impact stage. Well, impact is not a stage by itself, but why to focus only in impact? Well, the first reason is because there are limited resources, right? And we need to prioritize the species. We have many species to deal with, and we might manage only a few ones. Many species are already introduced, are already established, or are already invasive. So it doesn't make sense to conduct a full risk assessment, right? And also because something that I learned by talking with the managers is that from the scientific point of view, we see biological invasions like interesting from the point of view of their ecology, or thinking about biotic homogenization, but managers and especially also the society care about this issue because of their impacts. Otherwise, it's not a big deal. So also, okay, so this is used to identify the already invasive species that we want to manage and are causing the major impacts, but yet also many species are not in the country, and there are many, I mean hundreds, thousands, and how to prioritize that. And this is why when we could do an horizon scanning, and by having like several hundred species to say, okay, we're going to prioritize the ones that might cause the largest impact. So this is why to focus only on impact. And here I think that it's important to take into consideration some definitions about impacts, because this is also sometimes difficult to understand each other what we're talking about. Scientifically, an impact is any effect that a non-native species has on an ecological process or pattern. It can also be understood as a change of the deviation from a reference or a control stage. And I would say that, well, this can be measured at different levels of ecological organization or complexity. And it excludes the societal judgment regarding whether this change is desirable or has a value. So I don't like much to talk about negative impacts and positive impacts, but just changes. This is how we see it. So when using and constructing these impact assessments, I think that there are several challenges that they have to consider. One is that they need to be transparent in a way that the assessment should be unambiguous and unequivocal, so you can use it and then another colleague also can use it and in the same way. Also, it should avoid redundancy. So the protocol should not double count the impacts. Another issue is related to the clarity. I mean, the way that it tells you how to work has to be very clear. Oh, already. Okay. User-friendly. it has to have a broader scope. It's better if it's, I think for the management point of view, it's better if it can be used for plants and animals, for instance. It has to consider scaling issues. It can be reproducible and flexible. So one of such impact assessments is the generic impact scoring system applied to alien species, which it was first used for mammals, but now is generic. And this has been used to score the most harmful species in Europe, for instance. And this has been the origin of this other one, the EICAT, which I think is going to come very useful because it has been accepted by UCN. So this risk assessment, impact assessment, consider the following impacts: competition, predation, hybridization, transmission of diseases to native species, parasitism, poisoning, toxicity, biofueling, grazing, herbivory, browsing, chemical, physical, structural impacts on ecosystems and interactions. And each of these mechanisms it can have 5 levels, well, can be a score from 1 to 6. And then each of it can be, considered to be minimal, minor, moderate, major, massive, depending on how strong is this impact, whether it affects only individuals or populations or communities or ecosystems, and whether the impact is reversible or non-reversible. So this is how it comes, how you can classify your species. Some considerations is that it considers 2 time frames, the maximum record impact and also the current impacts. So the maximum record impact considers the precautionary approach, which is, the maximum impact that the species could have. So this doesn't mean that it's occurring already in the site that you are studying, but it can occur somewhere else. And also it requires documentation and bibliography. So also it's important to take into account uncertainties. And well, the uncertainties can be linguistic, stochastic, and epistemologic, but the EICAT takes into consideration the available information that supports the score that you are using. So it can be high, medium, or low confidence score, and this is based on the quality of the information that you have. Like, for instance, whether this comes from observational studies or experimental studies or reports. And also considering whether this information that you have in the bibliography can be scaled to the real world, and whether it's consistent, so, well, the quality of the information sources. So EICAT is a coordinated process. Each analysis should be done by a team of people. They should be assessors. It should be reviewed. The EICAT authorities should approve that. But this is something that is in process. I mean, there is no EICAT of species all over the world. This is something that will start. So I think it's very good that different teams are already using it at the regional scale or at the local scale as a proof of concept of whether this is feasible or not. So the final messages are that many introduced species cause environmental and socioeconomic impacts, that the impact assessments of biological invasions are scientifically based tools to help on their management. They allow for species prioritization. They need to account for uncertainties. It's not the same a massive impact that we are not very certain that the score is such. And also it's important that this to be a collective work to allow, to reduce the inconsistencies. And I think that that's it. I am showing this because some people say, well, this is science fiction because you don't know which species will cause the impact. But I think that here we are using scientifically based information to prioritize the species. So we're using the best information we have to guess. So it's not science fiction. So that's it. Thank you.